Hello, Matt.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm okay, man. Sitting back chilling, hanging out with the cat.
Just chilling and hanging with the cat. So
Yeah.
I got something fun for us to talk about today.
Okay.
It's a game that you have, and I don't know if you've played it recently,
All right.
but we're going to talk about the history of it.
Okay.
In so many different ways, has really been an instigator in the gaming world in America.
Wow. I have a game like that?
You do. And this is the game.
All right.
And I want you to tell me what you think about it.
Okay. Oh, E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial.
That's right.
2600 Atari.
Okay.
I should have seen you take it off my shelf there.
This is the game that is widely considered to be what killed gaming in America in 1983.
Yeah.
What do you know about E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial, the game for Atari 2600?
I know that it's apparently not too terribly hard to find still because I have 2 copies of the dang thing.
Correct. It's not hard to find. You can find it.
Despite apparently the company's best efforts to destroy every copy of
That's
it.
right. And you can find these copies for free.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean,
you can find it in the dumpster there.
Right.
Or so the legend goes.
Or so the legend goes. But it's actually not a legend anymore. What happened was in 2014, somebody decided they wanted to film a documentary of themselves digging up
Yep.
the supposed games and the cartridges and everything that was buried in the Alamogordo landfill in New Mexico. And they actually found them.
Oh.
It actually did happen. It
Wow.
was deemed to be an urban legend from 1983, but it was actually a true thing. So let's talk about how we got to that point.
All right.
In 1982, in June, Steven Spielberg released one of the greatest movies of all time, E.T., the Extra-Terrestrial, right?
Yep.
By July, Atari had already owned the rights to making the game for it.
Mm-hmm.
But Steven Spielberg wanted to be involved in that. He wanted to really be part of the making of the game.
Yes. I got a good intellectual property here. I want to make sure that it's served well.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
I worked hard on this movie.
And that's what you do. He told Atari that if it was going to happen, he wanted one specific person to write this game. And that person was Howard Warshaw.
All right.
So he had been working on plenty of games in the past for the Atari, and they were good games. But it took him six or 7 months to come up with these games. He did things like Raiders of the Lost Ark and a couple of others.
Yep.
Adventure games. And again, we're talking about the Atari 2600, so
Yeah, limited hardware capabilities.
very limited as to what you could actually do. Yar's Revenge actually was one of the better ones. I don't know if you have that one, but
I do.
Maybe we can talk about that one another time. So, anyway, they had gotten the rights by July of 1982, but they wanted to go live with this game for Christmas of 1982, which meant that by like October, they needed to already have the shelves filled with this game. That meant printing the box, printing the cartridge, actually having a functional game. Yeah. That's not easy to do in a short amount of time.
Oh, they just couldn't burn it onto a CD? Oh, wait.
No, you couldn't do that. You couldn't just write it up in BASIC.
You can't just, patch it immediately afterwards?
Nope.
Bethesda probably wasn't even around.
Right, no emulators back then.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And Steam wasn't going to help you out because they didn't exist. So, Mr. Howard Warshaw, who had made some great games, he was given this task to do. But in order for them to get all of that done by October or November of 1982, he only had about 5 weeks to make this game.
That seems unreasonable.
He had to do all the coding for it. The concept too. Like, it's not even as if they brought him a concept and said, hey, code this concept. No, he had to come up with the concept first, the gameplay, the visuals, everything, and then he had to code it in 5 weeks to give to them in order to distribute an actual cartridge by October or November of 1982. Well, that was a huge ask.
Yep.
And it didn't go very well.
Oh, no.
The market was saturated with games at this point.
Yeah.
The Atari 2600 was super popular. Everybody loved this. Everybody loved this idea of having a cartridge-based system in their house, right? So people were buying up these cartridges like there was nothing else. Like it was end of days. Everybody wanted every cartridge.
Shut up and take my money.
Exactly.
I want that Teddy Bear cartridge. Yeah. Oh, so cool.
So Atari said, "Well, we can do this. We can do this. This is not a problem at all."
It's the freewheeling 80s, man.
That's right. So they said, "Screw it. Let's do it. Let's make this game." Do you know how much money Atari paid Steven Spielberg and the makers of E.T. in order for the license to do this game? Take a guess. 1982.
Between a butt ton and a funk load.
I think you're right. Yeah. But give me a number.
Millions of dollars, right?
Many millions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the estimated price that they paid to get the rights for E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial was $20 to $25 million.
Dude, back in the 80s, man, that's
a lot of money now.
Oh yeah, give that to me, man. I'll make you an E.T. game. I'll whip it out. I learned a little bit about how to code in college, right?
Give me 4 days, I can make it. $20 to $25 million they spent just to get the rights.
All right.
And then they paid Mr. Warshaw $200,000, which is a lot of money back in the 80s, to code this. They said, we need the code in 5 weeks so that we can actually produce this for Christmas.
We have $25 million, but we want you to do all the work.
All the work.
Put all this together and just be happy about it. Make sure you have a great product that you give us here.
Right.
Yeah, and this is a recipe for greatness.
And we want you to put your heart and soul into this. But we're only going to give you $200,000.
Yeah.
But still, $200,000 back in the day. A lot of money, right?
Yeah. I'm sure he's happy to get it. I'd be happy to get it now.
Absolutely. We're going to make a game. We're going to base it off of this E.T. phone home concept, right? Mm-hmm. And the E.T. phone home concept was that E.T. in the video in the movie, he collected these parts that he didn't really
spell.
Right. Yeah. He didn't really know what they did on Earth, but he saw the mechanical, the electronics, and he put them together in order to contact his mothership, if you will.
Yeah.
And he contacted them. He phoned home, quote unquote, and they came and they picked him up at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
So Mr. Warshaw said, "Okay, that's going to be the basis of my game." And the way we're going to do that is with all these multiple areas that you go to. You can go left, right, up, down, and you can find, once you go through far enough and you find all 3 parts,
all right,
you will then build the device that will contact the mothership and you'll win the game. Okay?
Yay!
Great. Most people nowadays, historians will tell you, gaming historians will tell you that it was what destroyed gaming in America. And there's a lot of reasons for that. It was a bad game.
Yeah, it's really not intuitive to figure out. I've actually tried to play it before.
Right.
And, I'm just testing the 2600 out, and it's just like, all right, like Pac-Man, I get this. Yars Revenge, I get this. Pong, oh yeah.
Right.
But this instructions unclear.
Exactly. It was because even back in that day, in the Atari 2600 game days, the games were way more like intuitive, way more complicated than just going from room to room. And once Warshaw figured out that the game was too easy, he actually added another component of difficulty, which was a time limit.
Yeah.
So then he decided, okay, well, the game's not hard enough. So
he was probably doing his own play testing too.
Exactly.
You programmed the dang game.
There was no play testing. Oh. That's exactly right. They had to skip the play testing because they didn't have time.
No.
So you're absolutely right. Warshaw was doing all of his own play testing.
Yeah.
So there was nothing there. Right?
Yeah.
So
he designed the game. I think he'd be pretty good at it too.
So he designed the game. He beat it too quickly, and he said, "Well, what am I going to do to make this harder? Because no one's going to want to play this. They're going to beat it in 10 minutes. So he put a time limit on it. So now not only do you have to avoid these ridiculous looking guys that look like, FBI agents trying to run after you.
Oh, but that's what those pixelated little punks were.
Yeah, that's what those punks made out of 8 bits was.
Yeah.
Not only do you have to get rid of those guys or run fast enough that you outrun them, but you also have to do it in a certain amount of time.
Yep.
So okay, so now you're looking at a time-based, silly kind of game. And this is another reason why it was so terrible when it came out.
Yes, so I want a video game that really stresses me out. I just need something that... I got my boss, ragging me at work. You know, I have all this stuff I need to collect in order to make a phone call.
Why do you want to be chased by your boss in a video game if you can be chased by your boss in real life?
Exactly.
You play video games to have fun, not...
I get a recipe for awesomeness here, clearly.
Right. And so that's what happened. So after a few weeks,
all right,
he delivered this game. No playtesting. They didn't have time. It was released. And people were really, really, really upset.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons. But, nowadays, you and me, we buy games all the time, that we don't like.
Yeah.
And what do?
Yeah, put it on a shelf.
You put it on the shelf, you stop playing it, right? Yeah. You're like, okay, whatever. It wasn't a great game, but, maybe you'll be a little more upset if you paid $60 for a AAA title and you didn't like it. I mean, it's no recipe for a revolt, right? We're not going to go to Bethesda Studios or EA Games and protest, right? It was just a game that didn't work out.
I don't know, Fallout 76.
Right?
You might be getting back to that.
If you go back to 1982, it was a different world. Gaming was not quite as mainstream, but it was big enough that Atari had sunk $20 to $25 million in the rights just to make this game. And then they paid a lot more to get it printed and produced and shipped.
Well, and advertised too, right?
Advertised.
Because, this is going to be the big cash cow. So they got to make, they're already probably $100 million deep. Who knows? Well, at least that's what they were hoping to make.
Absolutely. One would think. And other Atari games had attained that level of brilliance.
Yep.
But there was a couple of problems. One, the game was produced too quickly.
Huh?
And it was terrible. It just didn't work.
Yeah.
And Warshaw, unfortunately, will be one of the first person that tells you that he just didn't have enough time to make this game.
Nope.
Games that we like from him took a lot longer, 5, 6, 7 months just to code it. And this is coding back in those days when,
that wasn't easy. Games are complicated now, but man, hardware level stuff to really make a game right. I mean, you need to know that processor inside and out to get every one of those bits and bots and bings and bahs, on the screen and looking good.
Yes, and that brings up a great point too, because the Atari 2600 had a lot of limitations, as you can imagine.
Oh yeah.
I mean, even the Super Nintendo or the original Nintendo, the 8-bit and the 16-bit processors, we didn't even know that back in the Atari 2600 days.
Yeah.
It was worse than that.
Yep.
The level that you had. It was basically large blocks of color that moved.
Oh yeah.
And that's all you got, and little deet 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 sounds. That's all you could play with. People were destroying these consoles. People were destroying the cartridges. They were getting rid of everything. It was effectually...
It was the death of disco all over again.
It was. But it wasn't the death of disco. It was the death of gaming.
Yeah.
And we lost.
Yep.
America had its time, and then they said no.
Yep.
The market had spoken. They said, we're not going to do this anymore. We're done with this game idea. We're not paying for any more of these.
Yep.
And they trashed it.
Yep.
So, in 2014, looks like James Heller, the former Atari manager who was in charge of burying the cartridges, decided that he was going to allow people to excavate. And he admitted to the Associated Press that 728,000 cartridges had been buried. And that's of various games. Don't get me wrong, E.T. killed it.
Yeah.
But they didn't just bury E.T. They buried E.T., they buried all their other warehoused games, and they buried their consoles.
Well, and that's part of where I differ a little bit on that stuff with the death. With the poignancy of E.T. destroying gaming, because as I've learned through various sources that it was a bubble bursting.
It was absolutely,
and the
just
E.T. was really the tipping point.
That's correct.
Everyone,
yes.
Atari, drama, drugs, craziness, they had such a phenomenal thing with the console, and they were milking it way too long.
They were.
They made a lot of money, and they thought that this ship would just keep on sailing.
They thought it would never sink.
And
you can put anything on it, it's never going to sink.
Yep. And if the bubble burst with ET, and then they realized that there's not going to be the market for this anymore.
Right.
And then what do corporations do? You have your warehouse stock. Sometimes what you do is you destroy your entire stock.
Well,
so you can write it off as a loss.
And that's the funny thing, because so far in my research, I haven't discovered anything regarding potential like tax fraud.
Yeah.
In terms of destroying like actual real estate, not property, but as in their game consoles and their cartridges.
Yeah.
But now that you mention that possibly could have been a thing.
Yeah. Where like they realize that this is the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
You have way too much stock.
Right.
So we have all this stuff. We could sell it for this amount. We obviously can't. So we're just going to destroy it. So it's like a legal version of burning your warehouse down.
Yes, but they couldn't sell it because nobody would buy it.
Yeah. So but if they could sell it for pennies on the dollar, but that would make the crash even worse.
That's correct, because they would have lost so much more money, except if they just disappeared.
So the important thing is that it wasn't just the ET cartridges that they were putting in there. It was the entire industry. I think there was a sickness, and this was the tipping point.
It was. Absolutely. It was just like the housing market crash 10 years ago, right? In the late 2000s. It was the same thing. People were getting something that was not real. Yeah. And they kept buying it, and they kept buying into it, and finally the bubble burst. And that's exactly what happened with the Atari system and ET. ET, like you just said, was just the tipping point of what had become a market that was overinflated, and it wasn't actually real, but people had bought onto that fad so hard, and people were loving it, people were enjoying it, but they had so much emotion in it that as soon as ET came out, they turned on it. They turned on it like a bad disease. So keep in mind, back in the day, you couldn't pirate this stuff, right?
Nope.
Okay. Nope. So when you bought a cartridge, if you didn't like it, you could actually take it back to the store. You could actually return it.
Yeah.
And the retail store would take it back. They would give you your money back, and
they'd give it back to Atari, or like, all right, we want our 2 widgets back for that.
Exactly. It's the same thing as if you bought a T-shirt from H&M. And you didn't like it, and you sent it back to H&M, and H&M sent it back to the person who manufactured it. It was, okay, done. Yeah. Right? Everybody got their money back except for the person who made it. Well, all of these returns ended up going back to Atari, and it bankrupted them. I mean, it bankrupted them. And so in order to get out of that, they had so much physical property that cost them so much money that was worth nothing that they just buried it.
Yep.
They just buried it in the landfill. And in 2014, they went out there and they found that this was not just a myth, but it was actually true. So,
wow.
Yeah. So that was the death of gaming in America, because we were new to that.
Well, I think that's pretty telling there, too, that, gaming never dies. People love having a good, fun time, and there can be backlash, and we see that today, too. With, like I mentioned earlier, the backlash against Fallout 76, right? You have this hype demon.
Yes.
That, and that's what they were trying to do with E.T., is this, like, they could probably see the writing on the wall. If I was an Atari executive, it's like, we need something to bring us out of this hole here a little bit. We're going to buy this big license. We're going to put our number one programmer on it.
Yep.
But through a haze of speed and poor planning, they didn't give the poor guy enough time.
No,
all because they wanted to make it to the market before Christmas.
Right. And it wasn't his fault. It absolutely wasn't his fault. He met with Steven Spielberg during his coding, and he showed him the format. He was like, okay, here's what I want to do. Steven Spielberg actually didn't like it. He was like, you know what would have been better? Maybe just do something like Pac-Man.
Yeah.
But with a theme of E.T.
That's a big thing. Well, simplicity is key with the system, especially in that era.
Yeah.
Like, you only had so much that you could do,
Right.
and some of the funnest games are the most simple ones.
Right.
Pong was the big breakout hit.
Right. And how easy was
early
that?
on.
Right? It was just bink bump.
Yeah, I mean, it predated the 2600. You know, you could play that on oscilloscope. There's versions of that that will run on an oscilloscope.
Yeah. But I don't blame him for going with his own vision of the game. I mean, if I'm putting my heart and soul into something, even if it's only for a few weeks, like, I don't want somebody outside to come in. Somebody like, Steven Spielberg, amazing director. He's made a lot of great movies. Yeah. But he doesn't know anything about gaming. So if he comes to me and says, hey, this is going to be a better game if you do it this way, I don't know if I'm going to necessarily take that. To be proof positive. Like, I'm not necessarily going to say you're right because you're a great director. You can make a video game. It's two completely different things. No. I've already made video games. I know what sells.
But
I know
hindsight's 20/20 with that there too. Because I mean, honestly, if he had taken the advice,
it might have been better.
Advice probably should have been like, you got something here, but take some time on it and go into a completely other direction. Right. It doesn't have to be Pac-Man because, you don't want Pac-Man suing you.
Not exactly the same.
But if you evolve that, you take an idea that already exists, you want a little bit of the familiar there.
Right.
And what he did in the end is a scavenger hunt. E.T. on a fetch,
it was a scavenger hunt.
Quest.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Fetch quest. Yeah. And that had been done in other games.
He went off looking for parts.
He went off
call home,
looking for other parts. He must have known the limited timescape and the expectation that was happening around him. And I was just like, all right, this is as complicated as I can make it. Hopefully that pays off. But he was just gambling the entire time, and that a lot of gambles paid off for Atari.
Yes, well, and gambles pay off in industry all the time.
Exactly, yeah.
But the thing is, Matt, that we don't see the gambles that don't pay off.
No,
because usually,
we see ET.
We saw this one.
When they don't pay off, they don't pay off.
But nowadays, usually the gambles that don't pay off, they're buried.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that to be a metaphor because, obviously E.T. was buried. We just talked about that. But, usually industrial failures are, like, buried. And we never see what happened. And we never see all the research that went into it before it died.
Yeah. I mean, industries go through cycles.
Yes.
So there's two – to me, I have two lines of thought on that. Is that it was just a cycle. This is the way it was. This is something that needed to happen so we could improve gaming in the end.
Absolutely.
And it worked out. Although I think the lesson we should take from that too, and who I really blame are probably the executives or the people at Atari.
Absolutely. Yeah. Who pushed this so far.
Took a gamble, spent a lot of money on an IP.
Yes.
And didn't make the investment that they needed to. Like they made the investment to buy something big,
right. $20 to $25 million.
Yeah, they really should have switched that around.
A ton of money back then.
Oh yeah,
a ton.
Well, and nothing was bigger than E.T. at the time.
No, nothing was. I mean, that was huge. It was huge. So it made sense that would have been a huge game if they had done it right. If they had decided that they were going to perhaps develop this game for a year and put it out the following year for Christmas.
Yep.
Christmas 1983 instead of 1982, we would have had a much better game in E.T. And it wouldn't have crashed the entire gaming industry in America.
Well, no, and that's that short-sightedness of I believe management at Atari at the time.
Yeah.
Where they're like, okay, well, if we get it out now, we'll be out for 2 Christmases and we'll make double the money.
more money. Yeah.
It's extremely childlike logic that goes into something like that, where you can push people who work very hard to make games.
Yeah, and they're good at what they do, too.
They're extremely good at what and even in short time frames, phenomenal products can be pushed out. And you see that in Japan, people working themselves to death.
Absolutely.
And like we'll be moving on to this with the Nintendo console.
The Nintendo that came out a couple of years later. Yeah. That revitalized the gaming industry in America.
Exactly. Yeah. But that time in the software is really important.
Very important.
And
it
just wasn't done.
And the playtesting.
Yes.
Which
was a thing for now we got some modern games where we're just
Sure.
like, they did play test it, but
Sure.
did they listen to the feedback?
And that's a funny thing, because nowadays we know about playtesting. I
Yeah.
mean, there's hundreds of people that are employed to playtest things.
Yeah.
On these big games, the AAA titles
Yeah.
that are, Xbox or PlayStation or PC. There's hundreds of people that are employed only to do that. The only reason they're employed is to play the game, beat the game, and try to figure
break
out.
it.
Yeah, they're employed to break it.
Yeah.
Break it. Tell me how you broke it so that I can fix that, right?
And to me,
But they didn't have that back then.
well, they didn't have that back then.
They had small playtesting, but even ET didn't get any playtesting because they didn't have time.
Yeah.
So.
Well, they were relying on programmers that had a knowledge of what was fun.
Sure. Yeah.
And like we alluded to earlier, he was probably the only one that play tested it, was good at it, and that's why he put a time limit on it, because it was even worse.
Yes. As far as I know, he is the only person that play tested it.
Yep.
Because he was given full reins to just do the best he could and be done with it.
Well, and I got a lot of examples in the collection of the shovelware that comes out.
And the shovelware, yeah.
That you go Eon Flux or whatever movie comes out. They make a game. Sometimes you get some gems.
Sometimes you get good.
Where you got a studio that really works hard, even though it might be kind of a crappy IP, but you pay a lot of money for that, and then that you lose that amount of money to go to developing. And that
can happen.
It can just crash hard, and it just ruins what could honestly be very good things, because it's just a cash grab for what people see.
Right.
Now I think that's
the hardest
going to be
thing.
a little bit better.
That's the hardest thing, the cash grab, right?
Yeah.
And we've seen that in modern gaming too. So E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial, the game, was the breaking point of the American gaming industry at the time, which was 1982.
All right.
And that's pretty much it.
All right.
The only thing that brought it back was the Nintendo Entertainment System. Thank you, Japan,
Oh,
for sending us the Nintendo Entertainment System
yes.
so that we could come back from E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add to that, Matt?
No. I think that pretty much says it all.
All right. Well, thank you very much for listening, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.